trying to think what else there was going on this weekend. The All-Star Game festivities in the NBA.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
There was that. And yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, Kevin Durant's, looking at the situation going, well, hey, listen, people just like to criticize. It's more fun to criticize the NBA and the All-Star Game on social media than it is to go ahead. Hi there. Than it is to
Jesus.
Than it is
that you?
I'm
coming home.
Where'd you park? Pollo Loco?
Jeez.
Going out to a ticket later?
It was a very It was a very interesting morning, though. I tell you.
Yeah.
26-mile drive, an hour and 20 minutes. That's
standard though for LA, isn't it?
I mean, that's a first for me. That's a first. I've never.
Worst I've ever seen with no accident.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yesterday was only 40 minutes to get in here, but I guess it's because it was a holiday. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, I mean, which would be a more interesting conversation than obviously the one that we're having right now. I listen. Kevin Durant is a great personality. He is one of the guys and one of the players that drives the needle, keeps them relevant in some aspects, in some regards. But, I mean, you can't be sensitive about the criticisms that are being levied their way and how, I guess, relentless and how aggressive the conversations of how bad some of these things have been, especially, surrounding the conversation of All-Star Weekend. I mean, it just is what it is. And again, that's just that the reality of it is that you don't have enough personalities like Kevin Durant's in today's NBA that are building relations. You ever think about that? Like I was looking at our comments yesterday, and it's like the whole idea of what relationships are being built between player and fan. Who is really, what teams are really building these strong bonds like we used to see in the olden days of the NBA when who was the commissioner back then passed away? Stern. When Stern was the commissioner, there was such a focus on building the reputations, building the personalities of these teams and of these players and connecting them with their fans. There's a disconnect. Certainly a disconnect.
I view this entire conversation because we kind of got railroaded there on the NBA, which Lord knows I don't want to talk about that as much because I think what I witnessed was the game of hockey in very similar lights. Well, you came in late, so you missed out on the initial part of the conversation.
I did. I was just listening to what I was just saying.
So the Four Nations hockey exhibition, right? Like it doesn't matter for any of those players in regards to the Stanley Cup, right? We're not to the playoffs yet in hockey. So you can call it whatever you want to call it. It was brilliant by the NHL. It had so much interest. I think the ratings were somewhere over 5 million or so ended up watching for basically an exhibition game. Very similar to what the NBA All-Star Game is. And you have, at least in regards to the NBA, one of the greatest ambassadors in the history of the game in LeBron James, who for the first time ever opts out to play. Now, granted, he is dealing with an injury and he's played forever and he's made every All-Star for over 2 decades. So I guess he's got the right to do that. But what I'm pointing out is the difference in the intensity of both these games. And I think that's the connection with fans. If I'm going to take a piece of my life, if I'm going to go spend my hard-earned money and go watch a NBA All-Star game or a hockey game that's an exhibition, like I want to see the intensity that you care at least as much as I do. And granted, I think it's tough to compare when you've got, for example, Four Nations, people representing their country, to compare it to the All-Star Game. Even though there's some international players, there's some guys who their representation goes beyond just representing whatever it is in the All-Star Game in the NBA. They're representing people back home, people in other countries. But to me, that's the disconnect. Is I'm not here to bash the NBA or NBA players because I think part of the reason why the game is where the game's at is because these are the most skilled NBA players we've ever seen. And so there's always going to be evolution in a game when it's like that. But what I saw in hockey, and maybe it's just the culture of hockey, because they both play the same amount of regular season games. And I'd make the case that the Stanley Cup playoffs is much more enduring because it's more of a physical sport anyway. And it's a longer road anyway to a championship than the NBA is. So, like, what's hard to watch is this load management era of athletes and this thought that, like, yeah, it's okay to sit out and take up a roster spot and not play because I've done this so much and I'm one of the greatest of all time. And then meanwhile, you've got dudes who are dropping gloves as soon as the puck drops because they're ticked off. And look, I don't care if it was planned or not, because they're ticked off about, hey, the Canadian fans were booing and we're going to show them something. We're going to set this thing off right. And that's how intense this game's going to be, even though it's just an exhibition. For me, like, that won me over. Like, I really don't have a dog in the fight one way or another. I'm just a fan, right? You know, didn't play at either of those levels at a high level. I do have a family member who plays in the NHL, but, you know, I don't necessarily say, like, Jack? Oh, I'd rather watch one versus the other. Hey, Jack. But for me, that was a moment where I looked at hockey and said, yeah, I think you just won over a lot of fans. And I know not everyone tuned in, but you see the viral clips and then you see the win and everything else, and it gives you chills, man. It makes you think about, you know, different movies they've made in the past. And, you know, I kind of sit back and go, that's the disconnect. Is the NBA thinks because they're so great, they're so skilled that people are going to want to watch. You're missing the point. You're missing the intensity of the game. That's what we love, man. We love the passion. We love the intensity. Yes, when it was more physical and guys got in fights, we love that too because we naturally love fighting. It's like if you're driving your car, you guys are both driving it right now. If two people popped out all of a sudden started throwing, you know, fists at one another, you'd stop and watch. It's a human reaction. You just
get
do.
Involved. You know, I just get involved.
Maybe you. I don't know.
I mean, I was feeling good about sitting in this traffic, so you know, I'd have had some time. You know, they'd have probably fought because they was in traffic.
You were building up a lot of that intensity.
I figure I'd get me some ones and get me a few in as well. You know what I mean? But yeah, you're right.
This isn't exclusive to the NBA. This is the same thing with the Pro Bowl.
100%.
People don't want to watch because there's no intensity. Yeah. Like, you played in it. Back when you played, dudes used to get hit, especially towards the end of the game.
Yes.
Like, they were still out there trying to win.
I was hunting hits.
That's what sport is.
I was hunting hits, especially if there was somebody on the other side of the ball that I didn't get a chance to see during the season. I certainly wanted to. I remember when Corey Dillon was in the Pro Bowl. I wanted to get him so bad.
He was big, dude.
That's why I wanted it. I wanted to feel what that felt like. You know, everybody was talking about Corey Dillon, and you know what? He's in the Pro Bowl this year. We're lined up against one another. I was trying to get him. You know, I think that's what you're talking about, though. It's like when Kobe saw MJ in the All-Star game, he was trying to get him. And then what happens? MJ seeing that Kobe's trying to get him, so I'm trying to get you. Like, I'm with you on that. I saw some of the hockey. I didn't see a whole lot of it. I saw some of it. I thought it was pretty cool. It kind of made me feel like it was like the Olympics, something to that effect.
That's what it felt like, right?
Yeah, it did. It
felt like they were representing something bigger than themselves.
It did. And I don't think, again, I'll come back to the connection. Like, there is a disconnect in today's athlete, which it's weird because you have every bit of the technology to connect with the fans in a way that you never have before. And I think that's why the ones who choose to do it, when they do these podcasts and they're player-driven podcasts, I think that's why they do so well, is because there is such a disconnect in today's athlete. And I say it's across the board. If you really were to go through, like, from fan bases of different eras of time, and you were to say, run it, like, tell us who the players are, tell us the team, what they represented, you'd be able to do it. You'd be able to do it. That's why you had nicknames for the different teams in all the sports. You had nicknames: Broad Street Bullies, Purple People Eaters, the Steel Curtain, the Bad Boys. You had different, because the connection with the fan was so important that everybody was in it together. I don't feel like it's like you're just watching more of a show. You're watching more of a product now, and they are so skilled that it's like, here we go, shooting threes, out there, throw the ball. Hockey, I can't really speak on hockey. I don't really know it like that. But I will say it just seems as though for a lot of times, for me especially, because I look at it as a fan as well, outside of the playoffs, I just think they're playing. You're playing. You're almost to the point of where you look at it and you say they're going through the motions. They're so good. You're going through the motions. You get to the playoffs. You know that it's intensified because you go home if you lose. That's it. Like, otherwise, I don't know all these players' names, and I am a former football player. I don't know all these guys' names anymore. I don't know what they represent. I don't know what the team represents. I don't know what it is. There's a disconnect. It's like you decentralize the fan base, the fans. You have your niche market of fans, but then you go outside of that, and everybody's like, I root for this guy because he's on my fantasy team. Like, I'm root for this guy because I got a parlay, and that dictates who I want to see do well. Okay, exactly.
Well, I'll tell you, I probably lost that one anyways. But it was also the contrast. First week, and we were mentioning this a little bit yesterday, but first weekend without the NFL, and you're looking for something, and the NHL gives you the Four Nations face-off, and they give you that, and the NBA rolls out that. And it's LeBron letting everybody know an hour and a half before the game.
Playing.
Yeah, I'm not going to play. It just a bad look, man. A bad look, and hockey benefited from it. Whether this is parlayed itself into better ratings for the league and more people taking interest. Like you probably captured some interest from people who looked at it and said, maybe I'll give this a try because this is a different product than what I'm getting from the NBA. And so, again, they can get all sensitive about it all they want. It's not like people are rooting for it to suck. They just want it to be a little better, and that's where we are when it comes to the NBA. By the way, Thursday night is the final, the Four Nations face-off final between Canada and the USA. USA is dealing with some injuries too, by the way. Got a little nicked up.
But you're all stars, right?
Well,
Aren't you all stars?
I mean, you're representing your
representing
country.
the U.S. Yeah, the U.S.
So it's the best of the best of the U.S.
From the U.S.
Right.
But there's obviously they're really good players on Canada. I mean, Canada I think was slated to.
They're the best, aren't they? They're the best at hockey.
The USA beat them 3-1 in the most recent.
We're going to find out Thursday whether they're the best.
Historically speaking, the Canadians play hockey differently than everybody else.
What do you mean by that, man?
I don't know.
Damn.
Isn't there another place too? Like, doesn't Russia play it pretty well too?
Yeah, they got other things going on right now.
Racist.
Dang.
Something going on there, yeah.
They're using
Sweden,
different sticks
Finland,
over there. It's
so-
too soon?
It's part of the reason why Russia's not involved.
Well, it was too soon?
How's that
Part of the reason
racist?
why Lee would not include some of the content in the rundown.
That doesn't. But that doesn't change the fact that they're good at hockey, though, right? I mean, you can admit that.
Maybe,
right?
yeah.
Okay, I'm
yeah,
just saying.
Got some good players.
All right. They're good shooters.
They're not on the gas. But again, that's to each their own.